Hi, welcome to this week's midweek warm-up. We are
recording
in the truck. Just thought
it's been raining.
Yeah, it's been raining. It's a little more quiet out here.
Until it starts raining more. Oh, there's a cat in the background.
Not our cat.
Not a feline.
No. Anyway.
It's a bobcat.
So we are in Job 31.
This is the end of Job's defense of himself, basically. The last time he's going to really try and say anything until he admits his failure before God later on.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's fresh off the heels of him going through and saying, basically he's hated by everybody now, and everyone spits on him. He's a loser. He deserves it. He doesn't know why he deserves it. It's kind of sad.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to read it?
Yeah, I'll read it.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, it reads, I have made a covenant with my eyes. Why then should I look upon a young woman? For what is the allotment of God from above, and the inheritance of the Almighty from on high? Is it not destruction for the wicked, and disaster for the workers of iniquity? Does he not see my ways and count on my steps? If I have walked with falsehood, or if my foot has hastened to deceit, let me be weighed on honest scales, that God may know my integrity. If my step is turned from the way, or my heart walked after my eyes, or if any spot adheres to my hands, then let me sow and another eat. Yes, let my harvest be rooted out. If my heart has been enticed by a woman, or if I have lurked at my neighbor's door, then let my wife grind for another, and let others bow down over her. For that would be wickedness. Yes, it would be iniquity deserving of judgment. For that would be a fire that consumes to destruction, and root out all my increase. If I have despised the cause of my male or female servant when they complain against me, what then shall I do when God rises up? When he punishes, how shall I answer him? Did not he who made me in the womb make them? Did not the same one fashion us in the womb? If I have kept the poor from their desire, or caused the eyes of the widow to fail, or eaten my morsel by myself, so that the fatherless could not eat of it. But from my youth I reared him as a father, and from my mother's womb I guided the widow. If I have seen anyone perishing for lack of clothing, or any poor man without covering, if his heart has not blessed me, if he was not warmed with the fleece of my sheep, if I have raised my hand against the fatherless, when I saw I had help at the gate, then let my arm fall from my shoulder, let my arm be torn from the socket. For destruction from God is a terror to me, and because of his magnificence I cannot endure. If I have made gold my hope, or said to find gold, you are my confidence. If I rejoiced because my wealth was great, and because my hand had gained much, if I have observed the sun when it shines, or the moon moving in brightness, so that my heart has been secretly enticed, and my mouth has kissed my hand, this also would be iniquity deserving of judgment, for I would have denied God who is above. If I have rejoiced at the destruction of him who hated me, or lifted myself up when evil found him, indeed I have not allowed my mouth to sin by asking for a curse on his soul. If the men of my tent have not said, who is there that has not been satisfied with his meat? But no sojourner had to lodge in the street, for I have opened my doors to the traveler. If I covered my transgressions as Adam, by hiding my iniquity in my bosom, because I feared the great multitude and dreaded the contempt of families, so that I kept silence, and did not go out of the door. Oh, that I had one to hear me. Here is my mark. Oh, that the Almighty would answer me, that my prosecutor had written a book. Surely I would carry it on my shoulder and bind it on me like a crown. I would declare to him the number of my steps. Like a prince I would approach him. If my land cries out against me, and its furrows weep together, if I have eaten its fruit without money, or caused its owners to lose their lives, then let thistles grow instead of wheat, and weeds instead of barley. The words of Job are ended. Dun dun dun.
It's curious to me that it ends that way. I mean, obviously you'll get to that, but...
Well, he finished his argument.
Yeah.
Although he really doesn't explain the if part. Yeah, obviously there's the argument at the very end of saying, then let thistles grow instead of weeds instead of barley, but really a small thing after all the big statements he made. Going, if. It's rather funny.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think from this chapter so far?
Again, he kind of seems like he's acknowledging God and God's sovereignty, but it's just kind of like, if I had done this thing, then yes, I would deserve this punishment. If I had done that thing, I would deserve this punishment. But I haven't done those things, so why am I getting this punishment?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So let's go ahead and start at the beginning then, and we'll go through it. So I have made a covenant with my eyes. Why then should I look upon a young woman? Why would you look upon a young woman?
I wouldn't. I'm pretty sure that's a Hebraism euphemism for getting remarried.
Well, not really. It's more of a not quite Hebraism. It's more of a euphemism more for having an affair.
Oh.
That's why I've made a covenant with my eyes. And so his covenant is to not do such. But if he didn't have that covenant, then it's why should I not look upon a young one?
Mm-hmm.
But because he's made the covenant, it's I shouldn't do this, so I'm not going to. And then it goes into what is the allotment of God from above, the inheritance of the Almighty from on high. And he's really asking him, what does God promise to give us? And he is pretty honest here in saying, destruction for the wicked and disaster for workers of iniquity. So basically, you do bad things, God promises you'll get bad things back. Which, yeah, that's obviously in the long run true. We discussed that through quite a few videos now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not an immediate, you did something bad, you're going to get struck by lightning, you're going to get hit by a meteor, you're going to get hit by a bus. You cheat on your taxes, you're going to get arrested next week. Stuff like that. It's much more of a, you do something bad here, you're guaranteed you're going to hell.
But I don't know that Job would have understood it that way, because that falls in line with what his friends were saying previously, that bad people get bad things. Like, bad stuff happens to bad people, and so therefore Job must have done something bad.
Yes. And that's what they've been taught, because they didn't have the Bible yet. But he's really going on saying, isn't this what's going to happen? And then he answers himself with saying, does he not see my ways and count all my steps? It's basically saying, God sees the evidence. He knows that I'm not one of these people. I have not done destruction things. I have not worked iniquity. I am the good guy. And then verse 5 goes on with, if I walked with falsehood, if my feet or foot has hastened to deceit, then let me be weighed on honest scales that God may know my integrity. And so in verse 5 there, the walking with falsehood part, it's saying, if I'm lying about this, then God himself needs to step in and weigh my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so nowadays we think of it and go, oh, well, that's a reference to Egyptians. Well, no, the Egyptians are referencing this. This came about a long time before the Egyptians did. And if you are familiar with Egyptian mythology, when you die, your heart is ripped out basically of your chest and then weighed on a giant scale against a feather. And it's a feather of Horus. And if your heart shows heavier than Horus, that means you're bad and you're going to go to hell. But if the feather of Horus weighs down and your heart lifts up, that means you're a good guy and you get to go into the golden field of reeds. Which that doesn't make any sense at all, but it's taken from this thought process of, if your integrity is present, then it will outweigh any bad deeds that could be levied against you. Okay, what?
I didn't know that.
Now you do.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that exciting?
I like history.
It's not herstory.
Oh my God.
So, if my step is turned from the way, or my heart walked after my eyes, or if any spot adheres to my hands, then let me sow and another eat. Just let my harvest be rooted out. So he's just basically saying here that if he has done something wrong, then someone else deserves to take the credit for it, what he has done good. And they deserve to reap the rewards of his hard work. Which, that does happen to a lot of people. All the time. But it's not necessarily because they did something bad. It's just how it works nowadays.
I'm not sure I see. I got distracted. That part seems slightly different to me. If I've walked with falsehood, or my foot has hastened to deceit, let me be weighed on scales, honest scales, that God may know my integrity. My step has turned from the way, or my heart walked after my eyes, or if any spot adheres to my hands. I don't know. I must have been, something you said sounded odd, and I lost it.
It's the way it goes sometimes.
Sorry.
I'd be sorry. That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone else can have questions. Okay, so if my heart has been enticed by a woman, or if I have lurked at my neighbor's door, then let my wife grind for another and let others bow down over her. So the first part here, the heart being enticed by a woman, that kind of goes in line with the first verse there of
Being seduced.
Yeah. And the lurking at your neighbor's door part is having an affair with your neighbor's wife. So it's pretty clear.
Yeah.
But verse 10, then let my wife grind for another and let others bow down over her.
So grinding just means she would be working for someone else. She would remarry or have someone else. Grinding is in grinding wheat or grain.
Yes. It's not the American euphemism for dancing.
Dancing.
That would be talking about manual labor here.
Yeah.
And then his response in verse 11 is, for that would be wickedness. Yes, it would be iniquity deserving of judgment. And the wickedness part would be if he has sinned against her by having an affair.
Mm-hmm.
And 12 says, for that would be a fire that consumes the destruction, would root out all his increase. So it would basically destroy everything that he'd done, which that would make sense.
Yeah.
He's saying, if I had had an affair, that would make sense that all my stuff was taken away.
Well, it sounds almost like, and I could be wrong, but okay, the lurking by my neighbor's door is that implying they haven't yet had the affair, but he's like waiting and wanting to?
Yeah.
So that kind of goes, I guess, forward to what Jesus says about if you lust after someone in your heart, you've already committed adultery with them. The sin doesn't happen only when you give in and you do the thing, but when you in your heart are entertaining that and giving it a foothold, and that will eventually lead to the actual action. So lurking at the neighbor's door, if he's saying not only would I be deserving of losing everything if I had had an affair or been an adulterer, but if I had even thought about it and considered it, I would be in the same place. But he hadn't.
Yeah, so this entire chapter is 7 hypothetical situations of saying, if I'd done these things, I would deserve what I'm getting. But I haven't done any of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so the third one here is, if I have despised the cause of my male or female servant when they complain against me, what then shall I do when God rises up? When he punishes, how shall I answer him? Did not he who made me in the womb make them? Did not the same one fashion us in the womb? So he's basically saying that if he had been opposed to his servants and taken care of them, then wouldn't God punish me? Because I'm equal to them. Because God made us equal. He's not saying that he deserves more than they do or anything. He's saying that God made every person the same, and so they all deserve the same treatment.
Yeah, well, and I guess when you read despised the servant for their complaint, it kind of makes me think like dismissing, like, oh, you just have to deal with it. I'm not concerned about your problem, or your problem doesn't matter, it's irrelevant.
Yeah, it'd be basically like us saying you blew someone off.
Or like sort of that defensive, like, well, you didn't do this, so yeah, I was wrong to do what I did, but I had a reason because you did this first, which is immature and incorrect.
Yeah, but his answer overall as to why that would be wrong is because he is on equal footing with the servants. Mm-hmm. And the only reason that he has the capacity to have them be his servants is because God has provided it.
Mm-hmm.
He's not taking credit for any of the things here. And it's actually one of the next ones. It's number 5 in this list. But number 4 here starts in 16. It says, if I have kept the poor from their desire, or caused the eyes of the widow to fail, or eaten my morsel by myself so that the fatherless could not eat it. But from my youth I reared him as a father, and from my mother's womb I guided the widow. If I have seen anyone perish for lack of clothing, or any poor man without covering, if his heart has not blessed me, if he was not warmed with the fleece of my sheep, if I have raised my hand against the fatherless, and then when I saw I had help in the gate, then let my arm fall from my shoulder, and let my arm be torn from the socket. For destruction from God is a terror to me. Because of his magnificence, I can't endure. Bell. My tooth still hurts.
That's gross.
No, that's pretty awesome.
Not your tooth, but the...
I'm talking about the arm being torn from the socket part. That's awesome. I feel like mine should be done that sometimes, because it kind of hurts.
Gross.
Don't break your shoulder if you can avoid it.
Yeah, so...
Okay, so this entire thing is his hypothetical situation is if I had not taken care of someone that had less than me. So his examples are people that are hungry, widows being widows, orphans, and someone that doesn't have a house, someone that doesn't have clothing, and then someone that needs help. All these circumstances, he's saying, from my childhood, I went through out of my way to serve these people. If they needed food, I gave them food. If they needed clothes, I had them make clothes for my own sheep. If they needed a place to stay, I had them stay in my house. If they needed anything, I went out of my way to provide it to them. And then his argument is if any of those things happen, then God should rip my arm off because obviously I wasn't serving them right. Which, that's kind of in line with the whole, if you steal something, then cut off the hand that stole it so you don't steal it again. Which, there's lots of argument for that in the Old Testament about things like that, but obviously God, as Jesus in the New Testament, goes forward and says, yeah, you know, you've heard it said that this is what you're supposed to do, but in reality what you need to be concerned about is going to hell. And so if you're going to sin by looking at something, then pluck your eye out, because it's better for your eye to be gone than for all of you to go to hell. Which is not saying pluck your eyes out if you're sinning by looking at something. That's not the right choice.
I think the point is just to express in a very...
It's a hyperbole.
Yes, a very clear picture, very clear way of... It's really not good for you to sin. It's better for you to avoid it. It's better for you to...
Not have the capacity to do it.
Yeah.
Which, the only real way to do that is be dead. But that's not a good choice either. Once you're a Christian, it's fine, but it's up to God to decide when that is.
Yeah.
But anyway, he has that. So he's saying, let my arm be ripped out, which is pretty awesome. And then he gives a reason why and says, because destruction from God is a terror. And obviously he's already lived through that in his perspective.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks God has gone through and killed all of his family, taking all of his stuff, and taking his health. He doesn't understand yet that God allowed it. God did not cause it.
Yeah.
But then he says, because of God's magnificence, I can't stand up against it, basically.
Yeah.
Which is true. We cannot possibly hope to contend with God. I mean, the only person that did that in history was Jacob, and Jacob paid the penalty for the rest of his life for doing such, and God maimed him. And because it's not just, oh look, here I touch your hip and oh, it's out, I'll put it back in later. It was, no, he's gonna walk with a limp for the rest of his life so everyone recognizes what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very visual reminder, but it's not very pleasant. So going on with the next one, in verse 24 it says, if I have made gold my hope, or said to find gold, you are my confidence. If I have rejoiced because my wealth was great, because my hand had gained much. If I have observed the sun when it shines, or the moon moving in brightness, so that my heart has been secretly enticed, and my mouth has kissed my hand, this also would be iniquity deserving of judgment, for I would have denied God who is up above. So this is basically him saying, if I had trusted in my wealth for all my security, then I deserve to get punished because I'm not trusting God. And this is something we've seen time and time again, especially in the last 100 years in the U.S. I mean, we're coming up on the 100th anniversary of the great stock market crash. And there were literally thousands of people that jumped out of buildings and stuff because their money was gone. Oh, how can we live without money?
Yeah.
People did it for millennia.
Yeah.
Trust in God. God will take care of it.
Well, I mean, obviously trusting in your wealth is something that is as old as time. Even Solomon, who asked for wisdom, was the wealthiest man ever, and I think that was partially God giving him the opportunity to gain wisdom by realizing, oh, I can have all this stuff and it doesn't mean anything different than being poor, because if my life is about material things, then I am poor. It's the whole poor in spirit. I don't know, I think it's clear that whether it's actual money, coins, gold, currency, or just material possessions, they're tangible, they're visible, they're physical, they're things that we can be like, oh, really, like, I know I'm secure because I have this barn full of food, and die the next day because...
Well, it's like the pandemic. You know, all these people that went and bought thousands of rolls of toilet paper.
Seriously, some people probably... We know some people who will not be named that probably still have toilet paper from 2020.
That can't use it before they die. Much less all the food that's stored up. That's the survival food.
Yeah, it's...
If your life expectancy is at 10 years and you have 50 years of food, I think you've overdone it a bit. That's not trusting God at all. But that's what Job's talking about. Obviously, he's not talking about survival food or anything like that, but he's talking about being secure in your wealth. You know, Emily's answering a text.
I'm not paying attention. It's an important text.
Well, it's a text. You can wait. But we'll go to 29 because Emily's doing that anyway. If I rejoiced at the destruction of him who hated me, or lifted myself up when evil found him, indeed I have not allowed my mouth to sin by asking for a curse on his soul. If the men of my tent have not said, who is there who has not been satisfied with his meat? But no sojourner had to lodge in the street, for I opened my doors to the traveler. If I have covered my transgressions as Adam, by hiding my iniquity in my bosom, because I feared the great multitude, and dreaded the contempt of families, so that I kept silence, and did not go out the door. Oh, that I had one to hear me. Here is my mark. Oh, if the Almighty would answer me, that my prosecutor had written a book. Surely I would carry it on my shoulder, and bind it on me like a crown. I would declare to him the number of my steps, like a prince. I would approach him. So really, this statement here, for his hypothetical situation, is if I have basically called for revenge on people, if you've called for people to get what they deserved, which I'm pretty sure most people have at this point.
I think everyone has to an extent.
Well, the funny thing is there's actually Psalms talking about this exact subject. And it's the psalmist, frequently David, calling for God to punish people divinely. But they're asking for God to do it, which is different than you doing it.
Yeah.
Or being happy when things happen that causes what you consider to be the recompense. And that's what he's talking about, is if I rejoice at the destruction of him who hated me. So if I'm happy when this person I don't like gets killed, or when they lose all their money, when they get arrested, when they get in a car accident, when they have a debilitating disease, illness, etc.
Yeah, so it's kind of what I think of most often is kind of the road, not really road rage necessarily, but like you're driving down the interstate and somebody zips past you going way faster than they should, and then a few miles down the road you see them pulled over and you're kind of like, ha ha. Like,
I mean, that's funny,
had that coming. But
it's not nice for us to do such.
Yeah.
Because we probably deserve it as well. We
Yeah.
just didn't get caught.
Yeah.
And that's where the issue is that we're being hypocritical when we do that. Because just because we're not going 40 over the speed limit, if we're going over the speed limit, we're going over the speed limit. That means we've still broken the law. And if the law is 65, then aside from reasonable mechanical limitations on your speedometer, which is about 4 miles per hour, then you're going 70 in a 65 zone, you're probably pushing it past where you can legitimately say that your car could be going 65 still, which is wrong.
Yeah. I mean, really, as far as Job goes in this section, I think he's not necessarily like, woe is me, everyone is mean to me at this point, or like all these people did all these awful things and I was so nice to them. It's just him pointing out that I never called for revenge. I never called for people to be hurt or to be I don't know, to get
what they deserve.
Yeah, to get what they deserve. He was merciful and he was gracious.
Mm-hmm.
And always kind of had that mindset of trying to take care of people and help them.
Yeah. But because of that, he says, why isn't there someone here to bring charges against me that has things written down to say what I've done wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Because if they did, and he defines that prosecutor as being God himself here, then if that existed, that he would be able to take it with himself and carry it as a weight on his shoulder and say, this is what I've done wrong, punish me accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
And then accordingly he says, I would go and tell him the things I've done wrong and show him, yeah, I've done these things, let me fix it. Which of course we can't fix it as far as sin goes.
Yeah. But again, that is showing his faith in God, that he's saying, I deserve the punishment for anything I've done wrong, and acknowledging kind of even in that he...
Yeah, he's not saying that he's blameless. He's saying that he doesn't deserve what he's getting.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the key part is.
Yeah.
Because he never once says that he hasn't sinned. He's just saying, show me where I've done something worthy of this level of punishment.
Yeah.
And of course, all of his friends were saying, well, you're a hypocrite. That's what your punishment is. Which his argument then is, if I'm a hypocrite, then where is the evidence that I've done something?
Well, and he also brought up if I am, then so are you.
Yes, he did point out that his friends are all hypocrites too.
Anyone who says,
you're a hypocrite, well, you're a hypocrite too.
well,
what's the problem?
My thought was going more towards Christians condemning non-Christians for their sins, like, oh, you're so awful, that sin is so terrible. Or even other Christians, like, oh, your sin is very visible, and how dare you have sinned, and you're an awful human. But I also am guilty of sin, and I'm also just as much in need of God's forgiveness,
Well,
if not more.
It's no different than people that say, I'm not going to go to church because there's hypocrites there. Okay. And you're not a hypocrite?
And there are no hypocrites not in the church.
Have you ever heard a politician talk? Or
Anyhow.
It's the same concept of, we've all done something wrong. We can't judge someone else for doing something wrong, really. Because we're just as bad as they are. The only one that hasn't was Jesus.
Yeah.
But to finish this chapter out, and Job's argument, he says, if my land cries out against me and its furrows weep together, if I've eaten its fruit without money or caused its owners to lose their lives, then let thistles grow instead of wheat and weeds instead of barley. So he's saying that if he hasn't paid fairly for everything he has gotten, if he hasn't taken care of people, and if he has hurt someone, then all of his crops should go under and bring bad things instead.
Yeah, it's again just another iteration of
More
if I've
recompense.
done this, I deserve all of this to happen. But he hadn't.
Well, he hadn't any. None of these things are total destruction things, which is what he's gone through.
Yeah.
Because he'd have to have something fitting to it. The Old Testament rule basically is whatever you do to someone that's wrong, that person's family has the right to do back to you. Mm-hmm. So if he went and killed someone's family, they'd have the right to come kill his family. If he went and killed all of their crops, then they'd have the right to come kill all his crops. If he stole someone's livestock, they'd have the right to come take their livestock back. Mm-hmm. And then double bound, because you have to pay a fee for it, basically. And he's saying here that he hasn't done any of those things, so he doesn't deserve the punishment that he's gotten from it.
Yeah.
And so then it ends with the words of Job are ended.
Yeah.
Very dramatic there.
It's just interesting because I can't remember who is writing the book of Job. Do we even know?
We do not know who wrote the book of Job at all.
So that statement is the author saying that's all Job had to say. He finally is kind of talked out of his...
I mean, it would make sense if Elihu is the one that actually wrote it because of the context of how it works.
Yeah.
Because he goes through and makes all these grand statements throughout the entire thing from his three friends. And then Elihu comes in and says, what are you three doing? And then he blasts Job afterwards because Job messed up too. Mm-hmm. Which, after that, then he goes through and he's kind of shut down by God too. Because he attacked Job when he shouldn't have. Which, Job did not deserve some of it. There's no question there. Because Job had turned from flat out saying, I deserve whatever God wants to give to me because God has the right to questioning why God was doing it. Instead of just trusting the entire time like he should have.
Yeah.
And so that's what Elihu gets mad at him for. But ultimately God is in control, and that's what the argument is.
Yeah.
And we're getting to the argument finally after months. It's a long book.
Yeah. So.
But leaves with a happy note that Job's words are ended.
Mm-hmm.
No more self-pity after this point.
Do you want to pray?
Unless there's something else you want to say.
Nope.
Yes. Watch next time. And don't come to our fundraiser because it was last week.
Yeah. That's just
even though it says it right
the
there.
sign. Leia put it together.
It's very pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's pray. Dear Lord in heaven, we thank you for this day, and we thank you that we have the examples in your book, in the Word of God, in the Holy Bible, to give us guidance and understanding, in that we don't have to make all the same mistakes everyone in there made. And we can just read them and understand, and we can come to you through these words that you have written for us. We just thank you that you are the great author, that you are our sustainer, our creator, and just thank you that you have done all these things out of your great love for us. And just thank you that you sent your son to die for us on the cross, and that you are willing to draw us to you and bring us back in relationship with you. And just ask that you give us wisdom, guidance, and understanding to go forward through these times, and just use these words to just draw people to you. And thank you for being you, the great mighty Father and God. In your wonderful name I pray. Amen.
So, if you have any thoughts, questions, or comments, let us know in the comments.
Yeah,
and
right
well,
they're
anyway,
also gummy bears.
He's eating chocolate covered gummy bears, which are gross.
They're delicious.
Okay. I think they're gross. Let us know if you think they're gross or if you think they're amazing.
They're actually gold bears.
Still, it's a gummy bear with chocolate on it. That's gross.
It's delicious.
Anyway, I suppose that's all for now. Hopefully we will...
They weren't in my pocket. That makes them better.
We will be back tomorrow with a movie review. So hopefully...
Or tonight.
Well...
We'll find out.
We'll see.
Should also have an update video tomorrow.
Should. So, thank you so much for your prayers. Thank you for going through Job with us. And We look forward to hearing your thoughts and talking with you soon.
Wish about coming birds.
Okay, bye.